Um, Mr. Assistant Speaker, I think I rise to contribute to the debate on our 2023 budget. But Mrs. Assistant Speaker, before I do, I'd like to thank my three Vice Ministers who've been assisting our Treasurer, our good member for Chuave, Vice Minister for Planning, member for Minyama, Vice Minister for Treasury, and our good Vice Minister for Finance, Honorable John Boito, who have been assisting in the budgetary process. So it would be not good of me to acknowledge the support that they've given us as ministers performing in the space of Treasury, Finance and Planning. Mr. Assistant Speaker, before I make my comments on the budget and at the same time support our Treasurer in tabling this very important budget, I'd like to just stress a bit on some of the points raised by the Shadow Minister for Treasury and Finance on our opposition side. But looking at the time, Mr. Speaker, if I can ask Parliament to move a motion before I make my statement, please.
Honourable members, is the leave granted? Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I want to move that so much of the standing orders be suspended as would prevent Parliament sitting beyond 1 o'clock this day, and B, Parliament adjourning a motion to be moved by a minister at any time.
Honourable members, the question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. Ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Assistant Speaker, if I can quickly just add on to some of the comments made by our good spokesman for the opposition on their take on our budget. Mr. Assistant Speaker, you would know that somewhat in the last 3 years, we've been trying to be as honest and transparent as possible in our budget in the past 3 years. As such, the principle of transparency has always been maintained in much of this budget processing until we've arrived in such times when we table the budget on the floor. Mr. Speaker, statements like when a Prime Minister of a country says our mission statement is to be the richest black Christian nation, and hearing our good spokesman from the opposition saying that this is an imaginary motto. Prime Minister, if through you, Mr. Speaker, if I can just say, we stand as a black nation. That is not imaginary. We already reached, Mr. Speaker. That is not imaginary. We are a Christian country, Mr. Speaker. That is not imaginary. Prime Minister is just stating what we are as a country already. Now the challenge is, how do we get there? If you look at some of the figures and facts that our good spokesman from the opposition has stated, to say, some claims that the government side is banking on the members on this side being naive. Mr. Speaker, I don't think so. We've had qualified members elected by our people to be on this floor, equally equipped and educated to be on this floor debating budgets, and I don't think our government is thinking that all our members on this side are naive in whatever positions they take on their political opinion. Mr. Speaker, things like office lockout, messing issue, these are issues that have been ongoing in the past, and as responsible government, we'll try to do our take in trying to take responsibility and set programs and projects to curb these ongoing problems. If you look at things like office lockout, forever an issue. 10 years, if you look at 10 years, we've been paying 300 million in our operational budget. Now the government has made a very clear distinction and a policy to bring in the seat of government, which will see government owning offices. So we saved 300 million in 5 or 10 years and invested money into law and order and other sectors that much need this money. If you look at the speech made by our good spokesman on the opposition, he said, I will pronounce blessing. Mr. Speaker, I don't see a lot of blessing in the written speech here. Much of it from the opposition, it has been criticizing our budget, but that's the work of the opposition and we take note of it. Things like bringing back some of the reforms that we did as government, such as the position of the Chief Secretary, some of the reforms like non-tax revenue bill. Mr. Speaker, our good spokesman on the opposition was part of the government that ended down the PMMR Act, which was ruled unconstitutional. And that has been now redefined as a more refined, more flexible legislation that we've now brought. It's not a new legislation that this government is proposing. And the intention of the bill is clear and the act that every member can pick out on the floor. Mr. Speaker, my support to our good treasurer. I congratulate and thank the good hardworking treasurer as well as the undying support that his department has been given him to ensure that we table our budget for this 2023. My comments, Mr. Speaker, this budget, and we thank the people of Papua New Guinea for giving us mandate, a clear mandate to the ruling government, Pangu, and we thank our coalition members as well for being able to come together and set the agendas of development that we want to see in the next 5 years. As such, what you see in the budget is an amalgamation of all our collective views as coalition partners in this government to see what we want to see in the next 5 years. And it's not just an agenda by a Pangu party or no, it's an agenda by all collective minds on this side of the house to present to us the money plan for the next 5 years. So, Mr. Speaker, our budget now is focusing on more of rural development. Much of our people are still unlocked, still in places where road has not reached them. Basic government services have not reached them, Mr. Speaker. So if you see the gist of the budget, if some of the allocations you go through, is trying to unlock the people that we find in our places. Places in like Bosavi, Mr. Speaker. Places like Kelafomin. Places like Kantiba. Places like Miniama. Places like Asiki. Places like Kendrian Gloucester. These are places that we want, Karamui, for example. These are places that we want to unlock in the ongoing programs that we as a government put so that everyone can come to the table and have fair opportunity, fair chance to contribute to nation building, Mr. Speaker. The theme of our budget, growing the economy, Mr. Speaker. If you see by the numbers, I think the paper by my department has been circulated, but Mr. Speaker, for the viewing of our people, and at the same time, I'll speak into it, Mr. Speaker. Our budget, Mr. Speaker, as I said, captures much of the dream of our people in the rural areas, Mr. Speaker. As you can see from that, major allocations have been given to provinces and districts so that we can all work together collectively. In the past, much of these programs have been captured and kept in major departments, Department of Works, Department of Planning, Department of Health, no. Now we've more centralized those fundings to provinces and districts. So if you can see in those allocations, all of us sitting in this house has been allocated a fair piece of the cake in those provincial allocations, including the shadow spokesman for the opposition as well has been allocated a funding in there, just the same as Finschhafen is allocated, and as well as Kendrian, Gloucester, Pomio, and whichever district that we can name in our country. Mr. Speaker, the numbers that Treasurer has presented, I will not get into. I just want to speak into some of the major PIP programs and the capital budget we have for the next 2023. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to highlight to the House the major initiatives of the government which we are trying to undertake to see and place and the interventions we want to make in all sectors, Mr. Speaker. The Mara Barroso government has made a deliberate and calculated decision to improve the 20-year Connect PNG program that has been running under the Department of Works. The initiative of this program is to connect PNG to 100% connectivity in the next 20 years, which will see basically in the transport sector an investment of 1 billion every year for us to achieve that dream of connecting the entire Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, as you can see, now from Vanimo you cannot drive to Medeng and all the way to Leh and all the way to Milne Bay or wherever. Our country is still in those pockets where we were kept in those. So this program now, Connect PNG, in the last 2 years is trying to unlock that and connect the entire country. Mr. Speaker, Connect PNG is still a major focus for our government. Land Partnership Program. Mr. Speaker, you will know, land is a major issue when it comes to development in our country. Landowner issues, as to which form of method we use in utilization of land. Thus, in our government, we have set aside a big amount of funding for us to partner with Lands Department in trying to acquire and partner with land mobilization, so investors, projects, anything that we want to do, state will now utilize that program for us to go into that space under the land development program. The 150 million that we will do for next year and potentially increase every year given the space of program that we want to do. Special economic zones under the newly created Ministry and Department of International Trade and Investment. The Honorable Richard Mao will now spearhead basic and most special economic zones, feasibility studies, bringing in the investors, and he's done incredible work in mobilizing countries and at the same time development partners to be able to support our initiative in downstream processing and special economic zones. Mr. Speaker, same as PMIZ programs, the EU Special Economic Zone, the Vanimo Free Trade Zone, the Manus Free Trade Zone. These are crucial programs that government has made the necessary legislations already, and thus we need to do the technical studies, and Minister Mao has brought to Cabinet a study costing for us to expand, and we've created in the budget the money needed for that program next year. Mr. Speaker, agriculture, I commend our government for creating 4 different ministries to deal with agriculture as a priority in terms of coffee, livestock, agriculture, and oil palm, Mr. Speaker. And as you can see reflected in the budget, not just creating ministries, but also allocating funding for those sectors to be equally equipped next year and start those reforms as said by our Prime Minister and our government. SME program, Mr. Speaker, our 200 million allocation for SME is still there. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the government. This SME program, when the government puts the policy through our government and through the policies done by DCI, Commerce Department, Mr. Speaker, Mipla give me money law bank. The government stays away from it. The banks trade the facilities and the products. It does not dictated by Prime Minister himself or the Minister for Commerce, no. The banks at which affordable rate or the conditions they said they're able to give in that space. So when our good opposition spokesman says that we are not investing in the space of growing businesses, Mr. Speaker, 200 million is a substantial amount of money to be investing into the banks. Mr. Provincial and district infrastructure. We note that our provinces and districts, when we elected, come with all of the things that we see and we've campaigned for in our districts, and creating that allocation is crucial for our members to be part of the nation building, Mr. Speaker. So when you see district and provincial infrastructure, that funding allocation is to ensure that we support the DSIP program that is there by 10 million every year. So this allocation sees to partner with those districts and provinces also. Mr. Speaker, in the provincial and district health program, we will be working with the health department through the guidance of the health minister to ensure that we invest in building up level 4 standard hospitals. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker, level 4 standard hospitals and provincial hospitals. If you can see on the budget, Central Provincial Hospital is brought on board for us to create a new hospital to take the stress and strain from Pomgen Hospital as well. So the hospital program is a crucial program that that will be administered by the health department. Mr. Speaker, for the first time, we are now trying to elevate the School of Medicine and Health Sciences into a standalone medicine university. That is to deal with the workforce that we need to be working in those district hospitals that you may build in. Now, what I remember, you may build him 8-post health center, community health post, level 4 housing, usat ba workload isla. Thus, we need to create a standalone university for our country in the medical faculty school to be a standalone university so that they can provide the workforce, skilled labor that we need in this health sector that we are backing by funding. Mr. Speaker, also this year and next year, we'll be looking at completing the Pomgen cancer facility. That requires another 38 million, Mr. Speaker. 17 million to extend the ICU for the intervention cardiology that we've been doing in Pomgen. So 15 million for cervical cancer, Mr. Speaker. This facility I'm going mama. Where you may set him throughout the country, or mama can go check him on it, whether I've got early sign or late sign or 1M sign, or cancer, or mama had to go check him on, Mr. Speaker. That has never been made available, and our government is making those interventions in this budget now. Narapla 10 million, Mr. Speaker, I'm helping all PHAs, blame audit him. I must plow sig stop, I must let post stop, I must work money stop. Only got work structure stop on Oga Rausiko. What are the things that are missing in terms of infrastructure? And that audit will be done to ensure that we check our health system. Mr. Speaker, education, major component, TVET programs are still running, School of Excellence programs are running, and the districts that want to build TVET colleges and all that, we've captured those programs that are ongoing, like the Mauro Technical College in my district in Sinasini-Ogumuk. Mr. Speaker, education interventions, as you can see in the budget, captured and reflected. Law and order, Mr. Speaker, we play increase in budget. Increase in budget from what we had in previous years, and we're looking forward to working with the Internal Security Minister to ensure things like, and I am happy to see that through the working plan, Mr. Speaker, or something was a Mayakan or something now, police yet but by Mayakan, or Barausi Mayakan, or police but only Karablongoliet. So this will be a thing of the past, and we commend the leadership of the Internal Security Minister. Mr. Speaker, government precinct. Mr. Oroas and Planetime, Mimi government, we have been locked out. And we've been faithful tenants in whichever buildings that we occupy. But sometimes when we don't pay on time and this, Oga right, all exercising or locking mipla. And thus, in the next 5 and 10 years, we want to invest in what we call the Office of Government Precinct. Government must own him office long emet. So that we save this 300 million imis a pay. Every yellow rental must go into health and education and others. So you stop paying rental, government got office long emet. Mr. Speaker, information technology may continue law funding of space, and in record funding for next year, Mr. Speaker, to show confidence in the work that our good SOE minister is doing, we've now placed 200 million kina to support our SOEs in those programs that we are running for the country. So that is a big intervention in the SOE space, and much of it has been ticked off by ADB. This little program, SOE, you meet us all some government make him. This line you must understand him. ADB is on a program with us to support those SOE reforms. Thus, we'll give him lilik money, you meet top him, you put him money, long supporting work, long SOE reform. Mr. Speaker, may I conclude? Health and education, sector by sector, Mr. Speaker, I'm stop long budget. But people think people government, Mr. Speaker. I think people are trying best in these very trying times to ensure that we have national ticket agendas that we want to take off, and at the same time, understanding that each district must bring something to the table. Mr. Speaker, the hopes and dreams of this budget is one, if we can unlock our people who are in rural places, multiple places in the country, everyone can bring to the table something. Now, time people of Finschhafen lock into the bus stop, some minimum lock into the bus. Bosavi lock into the bus. Everyone is not bringing their fair share in terms of nation building onto the table. Once we unlock our people and they're able to contribute, and we make those services, enabling services like infrastructure, shipping services, time people, Mr. Speaker, may I conclude, time people to connect PNG, planting manting osem, there's like connect PNG and road tasol. Look at Mr. Speaker, connect PNG and Mimi put him road, jetty, shipping services, subsidy plus shipping services all by line Mr. Island too can be connected. Like our districts, there are maritime provinces and districts are also catered for. Mr. Speaker, I must admit, all our list and all our things that we want to do as a nation and as districts and governors, all of them, if we had to add up, we don't have the space to cater for everything. But what we can do as government in our priority areas as health, education, growing our economy in the SME space, downstream processing, Nogata, we've tried to manage and cater for everything in the budget to set the pace. Now, Mr. Speaker, I may like thank him, our ministers on now who've been supporting myself and Treasurer, and our Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and the members on this side of the House who've been able to contribute meaningfully to ensure that at least there's something in the budget to ensure that they take home for the districts and the provinces, and we can move as one country going forward. Mr. Speaker, may I thank him, Treasurer, and all the members who have given a lot of support for the last MEC meetings, where you may try and come, talk budget, now you may go forward. Mr. Speaker, may I commend him, this development budget, blame me floor, na me opposem, you may can support him in the intention of the budget you may cut, you may all that you may capture inside. And as a government, we want to be fair. As a government, we want to be fair, and you can see in the allocations, no district gets missed out, which goes with the motto where you may talk to government that no child be left behind. You can see government, no opposition, everyone has a fair stake in the budget. So budget and blame me, in a block government, as what Shadow Treasurer talk, budget and blame because people blame me, look, all stab in said too. Pomio stab in said, Kendrin closer stabichet, same as Finschhafen again, Kikorina. Must be South Timor budget belong country. Mr. Speaker, me like pushes and me supporting budget, na me implementing budget next year. Thank you, Treasurer.